if you're doing A/B testing, one of those isn't going to work. So is that a failure, or were you just testing something? So I probably use failures as a little strongly. So there's every day we are learning something new, and we're saying, hey, what worked 2 years ago isn't working now. Let's shift this. And that's happened a lot across the board.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
I am fantastic, just wasting away here in Margaritaville.
You know, I have a question for you, actually.
Yes.
And that was going to be, what is your favorite Jimmy Buffett song?
I have to go with Cheeseburger in Paradise because I love cheeseburgers. And it's a great song, but I think that's my favorite.
It is a great song. It's a really fun one to sing along to at a live Jimmy Buffett concert. I thought you were going to say Changes in Latitude, Changes in Attitude. Because as I'm looking at you here, for those listening to this only on audio, make sure you check out the video version as well. Matt is in my dream destination, any Margaritaville resort with some sham pillows, decorative pillows behind him that say Changes in Latitude and Changes in Attitude.
So is that one of your favorite songs? Or just because there's pillows there?
There's some good I think there's some good words of wisdom in that song.
Would you consider yourself like a full-fledged parrot head?
I'd say so, yeah. Which it's tough living in Chicago. Although he does come to this region every now and then, but there was a lot more, I would say, parrot head devotion as a Florida resident.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But just because I changed my latitude doesn't mean I changed my attitude.
Well, you know what I was going to say is that Jimmy Buffett and his team have done a great job marketing what he does, what he brings to the table, how you can be involved as a parrot head. And today, we're not going to talk to Jimmy Buffett, but we're going to talk to John Penney, who also has an animal relation in his firm, right? BlackDog Advertising. But we're going to talk to him all about marketing and advertising and really serving the tourism niche.
I got to say, when we started this conversation off, I was thinking, all right, we got to come up with a segue somehow. And you nailed it there. I had no idea how we were going to tie it together, but you did. Yes, this conversation with John Penney is so fascinating. We get to hear a lot of, I would say, top level strategy and philosophy about marketing and advertising, and particularly how it ties to attractions, tourism, and hospitality. We cover so many topics like the importance of marketing having a seat at the table with many strategy decisions. We both get to kind of have them elaborate on the HR and leadership aspect of marketing, and then from the guest experience and operational aspect of it as well. So it's amazing to hear kind of the perspective of how it all ties together towards creating successful campaigns that help drive your business further.
What I really love about what John talks about is the way that his team not only approaches their clients, but also the art and science of marketing and advertising, because he will build in time for them to do research and figure out how to stay on the edge, the cutting edge of what is new and trending and the things that are really going to help their clients. So, it's the difference of, working on the client's problem versus, figuring out a way to take the client to the next level. And I just love the fact that they build in that learning time for the team.
Yeah, totally. And all of that leading into helping the client exceed their goals and their of marketing and advertising that then ties into their overarching business goals as well. So I'm so excited to get to this interview. Before we do though, what's your favorite Beatles song?
My favorite Beatles song? Oh my goodness. I don't know. I mean, I'd have to really think about that. There's so many. I mean,
the
the
reason why I ask is because you're sitting in Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville Hotel wearing a shirt that says "Come Together"
That's
on it.
true.
So
I wouldn't say that's one of my favorite songs, but this is actually from Lagoon in Utah. Little shout out to our friends at Lagoon. And on the back, by the way, it says "Support your local amusement park." So great T-shirt. But if you're going to ask about my favorite Beatles song, I may have to get back to you on that. I'm going to have to go through my catalog and figure that out. So stay tuned.
It's a tough question. It's a tough
is.
question. But in the meantime, let's get to this interview with John Penney.
John Penney with BlackDog Advertising. Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. How are you doing today, John?
I am fantastic, and I'm happy to be here in bed with you today. Right? I mean, it's essentially what I'm seeing in the background here. Well, let's just go ahead and call it out before we get too far along.
Exactly. Yes. For those of you who might not be watching, I am in a hotel room, so that's John's vantage point. But John, can you give us a little bit of background on your career as we lie comfortably in bed together?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a little irreverent, as you've already gotten the tee off of that. And I started my career over 34 years ago. Founded this company, BlackDog Advertising, 33 years ago. So I've been doing it quite a long time. And I like to tell people that I had a very unusual kind of brain for the time because I like to do programming. So I would take programming classes in high school and in college, and also fine arts. And there wasn't much of a niche for that back in 1988 when I graduated. And my first job out of school was at Crispin & Porter, which is Crispin Porter Bogusky, which is a very large ad agency. They actually got the 90s. They were one of the top agencies in the world in the 90s as far as creative agencies go. But we were not using technology at all. And I actually talked to my younger staff, and I talked to them about T-squares, and I go, we would use T-squares and paste up, and there was people don't know what that is, and so we were doing everything manually. So I started to play around with computers and color printers that were just Gen 1, and decided to go out on my own and open up my business. And my first client was Crispin & Porter. They sent me the work because I was able to kind of automate it. So that's kind of always been our mantra from the beginning, is this mix of technology and creativity to facilitate, marketing ideas. And we always try to stay right on the edge. Sometimes that's very painful to be on the edge. So there's a fair amount of experimentation. There's some failures. You kind of have to be acceptant of that. And so that's kind of leads me here to today, 33 years later, talking about marketing, which is something I love.
Can you expand a little on, you talked about staying on the edge. Would love to know if maybe we can dive a little bit deeper into that as far as what that means and kind of what that looks like within your business.
Sure. So we could do a better job at everything. Like I always am like, when I start talking about us, I'm like, this is where we want to be, and this is what we are achieving. So I always think we could be better, but we just naturally, as part of anybody that works here, we assign R&D hours to everybody, and it's not billed to the client, it's billed to the agency, so that we can always be learning, understanding new things, because stuff, again, I see just now the compression of advancement on things is just, it's mind-boggling. So if my team is not out there, if they're working on assignments all day long and they're not out there researching and understanding what is to come and learning, then we're going to be behind. And our clients really count on us to kind of tell them before things are happening. So if by the nature of the agency, we're out there learning, we assign time to every individual, from somebody who's a creative to somebody who's in marketing strategy, to go out and learn something. And we kind of have it as a loose thing, meaning you get hours to do that, but we want you to find something that you're passionate about. And then if you hire people that are very diverse, which we do here, you get a lot of things from a lot of different angles. And so me as the owner, not only do I love that's exciting, but I have a team of people kind of helping me to be smarter, and our clients to be smarter. And that's kind of baked into what we do, right? So then everything from that stems from that, because then you're bringing ideas and then you determine, wow, how could this benefit our clients? And as you know, our clients are tours, attractions, museums, and some resorts. And so we look and we kind of put that under their prism and say, microscope and say, would this work for these folks? Would this be something that could help them? And then you have to look at the costs and the logistics of making and executing that. And so those things are all into, we evaluate. And sometimes I have presented things to clients that it took over a year or two for them to really say, hey, let's do this. Oftentimes they wait for somebody else to do it. We have some clients that are willing to do it right away. So it really depends on the clients. And then we have some areas where we just kind of work on stuff in-house in an experimental fashion and develop things on our own, to see how that works before we roll it out to clients. So it's a little bit of it's not formulaic, because I think it starts a little more organically about gathering, because you don't know what's out there and you don't know what's trending until you find it or you discover it in what a client is doing. So, and then we bring that back in here and we kind of work it, and the ideas that we think are going to benefit the clients now and in the future, we start working with the clients to kind of show them that vision.
So John, can you talk a little bit about how you got so involved in the tourism industry and in this niche? Because obviously advertising and marketing, everybody needs that, right? So how did you get kind of into this niche?
How is it not the coolest niche to be in marketing and advertising? I mean, first of all, if you had to pick from a drop list, wouldn't that be the one you would pick? I mean, it's pretty awesome. So it's evolved, but I guess our first travel and tourism client was in '91. And we, it's interesting, and I'll tell you, it's a client that we still have, which is also phenomenal, right? That's kind of unheard of. It's two gentlemen that started the businesses in Key West, that they own the Comp Tour Train and a lot of other businesses in Key West. And Key West kind of had a downturn, and they were visionaries, and they were like, we think we can do something here in Key West, but we need to make it more appealing to tourism. The Navy was leaving town. There was a bunch of stuff happening, and they started to kind of build up these museums and attractions that started in Key West, but branched out all over the country. And I just kind of caught that bug with them, because I think if you've been around, and you two are great and you're passionate, and I've seen you present many times, and we always leave jazzed and want to implement the things that you guys talk about. And there's people such as yourself that really are inspirational in a particular area. And it's Chris Beland and Ed Swift, who are the two gentlemen that really started that, and then a huge team of people. And we just were lucky enough to be able to be their marketing firm initially. And so that has led to us opening up Boston Tea Party Ship and Museum. When I say us, please know that I'm talking about my client and my team, because we can't do it without the client. I always do that when it's us and we. And so, from California to Washington, D.C., we've been able to open up tours and attractions all over the country with that specific client. And they were the ones that they always have something cool, new, and unique to do. We just finished a thing for an aquarium that was a Captain Nemo style undersea adventure that we did a 3D animation for, that was across 120 feet of the inside of this, and just trying to engineer that and figure out how to do that. And that's the kind of thing. And I don't think it's not just them. I don't want to make it all about them, because all of our clients kind of have that same. They're entrepreneurs, they're visionary people, and we get super excited when they start kind of talking about what they want to do and how they want to create. And so that just kept me hooked. I mean, why would you not? And we've been to several engaging meetings with you guys, and what a great group, right? Anytime you go to these attractions meetings, it's just a great group of people. And so why would I want to do anything else? Like we do a few things here and there when people ask us to, but it's really something that we're not only knowledgeable, but very passionate about, and very, very lucky to be in this business. Sometimes it's not lucky when you have a hurricane that rolls through and wipes out a few attractions or pandemics. I mean, there are challenges. It's not all, roses, but it is, it's something that's, I think it's the best that you can do in our career, marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say that I have some fond memories from the early 90s of the Contour train in Key West as a child, and then even as an adult later on of doing that multiple times. So it's kind of cool to hear that part of the story there. You mentioned kind of the difficult times, hurricanes coming through through Florida, obviously, and other geographic regions as well. Pandemic, which of course has hit the entire industry. How has that, I would say, influenced advertising? I remember at the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020, I read an article that says, like, now is not the time to stop marketing, because so many people were just halting altogether. But it had to be a different language, a completely different tone, whether you were open or not, and all of that. So would love if you can share a little bit of how you've helped your clients be able to navigate just these uncharted waters the last couple of years.
Well, it's been heck, since I'm not going to start cursing on your podcast. We have, I don't know if it's a fortunate or unfortunate, a bit of experience in managing around natural disasters. In fact, I wrote an article for Adweek, and I do presentations in and around hurricane season to groups, just kind of talking about how marketing needs to have a seat at the table. And what ends up happening is a lot of the planning around stuff like that has to do on the operations side, which we can't, we can't do our business without the operational side of the business. But oftentimes they don't include marketing in decisions. So we have, for many, many, many years, because you asked the question about marketing through, pandemic and other things, we said, get a seat at the table, please. And here's a plan to talk to your operations and your sales and your entire team. What is going to happen when something negative happens, and what's step one, step two, step three? Now, there's a lot of fundamental things that we talk to our clients about. We look at their POS systems. We look at, employees. We look at training. We look at a whole bunch of things, because if the operation doesn't run well, and if it's not an enjoyable experience, none of the marketing is going to matter, right? But also, introducing to the folks out there that are interested in your product, you need marketing. You have to have, they go hand in hand. So one of the things I talk about is you've got to include yourself in the meetings, the operations meeting, and say, what are we going to do during a hurricane? So the last hurricane event that we had to deal with, we said, you've got to, no matter what, and we had already set our clients up. We had them with, this was before the hurricane even hit, we had them with satellite communication devices, satellite radio, so that they could talk and communicate out. And some of them didn't have social media, but the ones that did, we were like, communicate no matter what, even if it's a problem and something has been messed up or whatever, communicate and get it out there and let people know. We had more views, more interest in social media, more people that care. And it was a caring brand connecting with a caring group of people. That is really, really tough to kind of come by with just traditional marketing, right? We always think about the traditional marketing. And we were like, show your community and your potential guests what you're all about. We had clients that kept people on payroll even though they couldn't operate their business for months. We had people that were opening up and giving out water. So those are great opportunities. You're taking a really bad situation. So always have a communication plan around that, and make sure it is that your marketing team is marketing, but it's not in the traditional sense. You're just letting people know that you exist and that you're human as a corporation, and you're trying to get through it. And believe me, you will get a ton of help. And the other thing regarding the pandemic, well, I've been through it all. Like we literally had our home and our office destroyed by Hurricane Andrew in '92. I won't say I've been through it all, because that's a jinx in and of itself. Been through a lot, as have most. And we have seen the ups and downs and the .com busts and the housing, et cetera. I have never seen anything like the pandemic, and how it wreaked havoc on our clients, and really just exhausted mentally and physically. We were taken from what our norm was, and we were, kind of restricted at home, and people kind of had to get used to that. I mean, you see how we've kind of reinvented so many ways of communication now, and that happened as fast as it's happened in any time that I can think of, where it wasn't something that was, even hurricanes are somewhat isolated in a small area. This was global, right? So everybody had to get used to that, and how they were communicating around it. Some of the stuff from the hurricane, we're like, just tell people what's happening. Let them know if you're open or closed. Let them know what your intention is. And I would say the biggest challenge is, so we have clients in many, many states, from California to DC to Key West. We had clients in Key West that had the busiest 2 years they've ever had in record, because of how Florida was open, and many in the state of Florida did incredible numbers. And then we have other states that they don't know how many guests they're allowed to have. They have a lot of conditionals before they could even open up their business. And so the pressure on all of these folks to try to run a business, it's kind of unprecedented. And trying to develop a marketing plan and going, can we have half capacity next month? Are we allowed to have full capacity? Can we hire? Are they going to close us down if we're a museum? Or, how are we going to enforce this? I think it's amazing how our industry responded to that, right? I don't think you can oversell the pressure that the marketing and operation teams were on, and the staff and the ownership to try to get all that stuff to come together. And so, you asked the question, how did we, kind of handle that around the pandemic? Well, it depended on who it was. Our clients that were doing well, let me just say this: we don't make any more money. So I want to preface what I'm about to say. If you increase your media budget, because we don't make a commission on it, we put it to wherever the media is. Our customers that were in areas that were busy, we said, you need to spend more. And they were like, what are you talking about? We're doing busy. We're very busy. And I said, do you have occupancy? And do you have staffing? If you do, you need to spend more, and here's why: because now you're after people's vacation time, which is critical. And we have methods now where we can target people before they ever get into town, and it's a very reasonably cost investment. And so let's say you're up 15 to 20%. Well, would you like to be up 30 to 40? And that initial, so it's almost like a math problem where we can show them. And then because most of it is digital, we do testing and we find out pretty much right away. Is it working? Is it a proof of concept? Is this thing working? And then the interesting thing, and this is no disrespect to the OTAs, the Expedias and Travelocity, et cetera. But a lot of folks just put all of their interest in that and say, we're just going to let them. And I have to remind them, it is absolutely part of your portfolio that you need to, invest in marketing, but understand it's 20 to 30% of an investment for that. And so we try to show them other ways to kind of supplement that, where there is, you're not putting everything in one channel. And that's a really important thing to do. And so we had clients in the busy side of things that were just doing, and still are doing, incredibly well. And increasing the advertising, in fact, did, the marketing that was out there did, in fact, absolutely exceed all of the goals that we set. And then the clients that are in the areas that were not able to open up, it was a real struggle. Washington, D.C., we're finally seeing things that are just picking up in D.C., but it was a long time in DC, and they have to deal with street closures and all sorts of things that you just never know are going to crop up. And that group really, really had it the toughest. And actually, some of my favorite clients are up there. And, they had to lay off a lot of really good people. And now they're kind of coming back into it. But again, my main thing is to continue to communicate the situation that you're in. Don't make it political, just state the situation. This is what's happening, and continue to lay the foundation, because when it comes back, and we knew this, when it comes back, it's going to come back in a big way, because folks have been isolated and they have been inside, and they're going to be ready to do what we're doing. And I'll end it with what's great about it is, and I get a lot of email because every client, all of their feedback actually comes into my inbox. So I get to read stuff. And the emails and the letters for people getting out of the house and getting to do things, of these experiences, museums, tours, attractions, they are so happy to be out there, and they share it, not only just posting it out on the review sites, but actually directly back to the clients. And it is kind of a great kind of, these people that have worked so hard to keep their businesses open. It's just great to see that what we do is, I don't know if it changes people's lives, but people work 11 months out of the year, maybe even longer, to come and enjoy what our clients have to offer. And getting that kind of feedback after you've come out of that challenge is a pretty special thing.
Wow. Yeah, John, there's a lot to unpack there. So
yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. You don't mind if
that was a bit of a filibuster, right?
No, if you don't, I'm going to go take a nap, and then I'll let all that absorb. But I would
join you virtually. I
do want to go back to something you talked about, that you really kind of struck my center, if you will, when you talked about marketing having a seat at the table, because often we talk about HR needs to have a seat at the table, right? And I think there's a lot of parallels between what marketing and advertising do to communicate to people and gather interest that we need to do in HR, right? I mean, it's just a different group of people. And you mentioned that you sometimes work with, employees and look at the training. Can you talk a little bit about how marketing and HR might be able to work better together, so that they're not, in their silos? HR is doing their thing, marketing's doing their thing. I think there's a lot of synergies that we're not taking advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. So I saw a bunch of relationships where they were actually against each other when we come into the situation where it's kind of us and them. And so the first thing is to put everybody having a seat at the table and have routine meetings where you include everybody so that they get their talking points out. When groups divide, that creates the divisiveness that can really kind of bring down an organization. So, and it's even more challenging with the remote workplace. And so you really have to, first off, invite all of those people to the seat of the table, at the table. And then when you're implementing something, for example, if you've got a review program and process where comment cards come in online, however you do it, and it comes in through the marketing department, let's say, because oftentimes that sort of stuff is set up through them. And they're coming in as the marketing department and getting in front of the staff and saying, you guys need to do all this stuff better. What do you think is going to happen in that situation? It's going to be a bit of a us against them mentality. So you really have to set up systems in place in and around that, where yes, information gathering is important and we need to know how we're doing, but all of the systems of communication and who does what, it's really important that you kind of get that laid out in a process chart, so that there isn't like, who's supposed to be doing that, who's supposed to be doing this. And then decisions are made around the table with a group. Obviously, there has to be a head manager that says, this is the way we're going to do it. But bringing in that group idea is critical. And then continuing to have those meetings, on a routine basis. Don't make it just every once in a while, and it's on a routine basis. So that, again, to reiterate, the biggest thing I see is the divide when they're different departments and they're all going to a central boss, kind of relaying to her what their problem is, and this side is relaying what this problem is, and they're not all meeting together. So it really creates some tension that just isn't necessary. When we get into kind of our initial consultation, I want to meet with all of those folks. I really want to understand all the pain points. We want to, because again, if that's not working, I don't care how great a job we do, it's going to fail. And so there are one of our clients that I can think of that's, we came in and advised them on everything from, uniforms that they were wearing. We did some surveys around what people were kind of concerned about, and brought all those teams in and kind of made decisions around that, like what were the next steps. So I think that would be the biggest thing is communication and connection with those teams.
That's so interesting, and I think it even touches kind of on marketing, HR, and leadership, and then guest experience, which is something that I'm passionate at and I focus on a lot. So Matt asked the question about HR. I'll look at it from a different lens and ask about it from guest experience. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is about meeting and exceeding a guest's expectations. So marketing and advertising obviously plays such a large role in being able to do that. And one of the things I say, or I believe, is that the phrase under promise and over deliver is probably not the favorite phrase of anyone in marketing or advertising. But at the same time, I also feel like I've seen instances where an advertising campaign for a certain business, regardless of what industry, might be a little bit inflated compared to the experience. So it's with the goal of driving business in. So it's accomplishing that. But then the guest experience and operations team might have a more challenging time being able to meet or exceed that. So I guess the question that comes out of it is, how do you make sure that you are helping your clients set the correct expectation for the guest who's coming in?
That never happens. We never make that mistake. So no, I'm just kidding. It is absolutely a thing. We have made a mistake in. But I always tell people the story, like, and I don't mean to call out Disney World because they're fantastic. I love them. I think Matt might be visiting them, sometime soon. And but they show the family walking down Main Street, holding hands. It's a beautiful blue sky. And there's not a lot of crowds, right? And the reality in August is it can be very hot and it can be very crowded. And, recently you couldn't even get real close to the characters, right? So there's this expectation thing, and it's always a challenge. So how we do it is we say, look, what are we on our best day? And you might not like this answer, but this is my marketing answer. How are we on our best day? Because I'm not going to show in marketing a scene where it's pouring down raining and it's a thunderstorm and we got washed out for that day, and the food wasn't prepared correctly. So where are we on our best day? And let's strive as a team, to meet that, right, or exceed that, right? But it isn't. You don't want to put something that isn't true. So we have. We don't have enough time to kind of talk about the mistakes over the year, but that we've made over the years. But just if you're showing, animals in a zoo, you got to show the right animals. You got to show, things that they're actually going to see. There are mistakes even that fundamental that marketing firms can make, and then you certainly don't want to show something that's impossible that you're not ever going to see. But we've got water sports companies, and I can tell you, there are some days where you can't see the reef, the coral reef, and it's murky, and there's no fish out there. And there's some days where it's like a paradise. And so it is a challenge. Do you show the murky underwater stuff, or do you show what is the best possibility of the day? And so it is a fine line. And then you measure what happens, because like I said, we get if somebody says, this is not at all what I was promised, and they're talking to the team about that, and they're putting comments cards, then the marketing is totally ineffective in that case. And people understand when it rains at Disney, but they don't understand if you showed them something that they just never could get. And that's where we try to be accurate with our advertising. We're only showing what's there, not inflating it, but showing it on its best day. And so I think, particularly, recently we've had, like, I can remember actually getting a reef shot that was from the Great Barrier Reef and not Florida. We put that on a stock, didn't research that properly. So, and we found out really quickly, if you put up a fish that isn't native to a particular, somebody's going to say that's not native. So you've got to be a lot smarter about that. And I think we've done a better job, not perfect, but I think we've done a much better job. But again, show your best day, but don't show something that you don't have and you can't ever have.
So, John, I want to know who to talk to, because you said it rains at Disney, and I just didn't think that ever happened. So I want to know who to complain to. No, but I do think this kind of leads into something I've been wondering about, and it mentioned it in your bio about helping your guests or your clients exceed their goals, which they could be guest goals, they could be employee goals, they could be marketing goals. But do all of your clients really know what those goals are? Right? Or is that something you have to help kind of bring to the table in terms of, hey, you're the expert, you're the consultant, you kind of help them navigate those waters?
Sure. Well, it's a relationship, and each relationship is different. And there are the needs. We have family-owned organizations that have boards of directors. So it's a little bit of a wide-ranging thing, but we try to do our research right initially before we even have our first meeting to kind of understand the outsider perspective. And then our first meetings are really kind of listening to their business challenges. And some of that incorporates marketing, and some of it is just general business challenges. Most of it is, right? And so after we listen, then if we see areas of opportunity, we'll come back and make some suggestions. I'm going to tell you, a lot of times people really know what their issues are. They just need kind of somebody else to confirm that to them. And then there are a lot of folks that don't understand the technology around it, which we try to actually come in and support them and set up systems around the technology that can help them with that. But for the most part, we come in, do that first analysis, and then we come back with a bit of a marketing plan outline for them. And it may be 15 pages, but we try to distill all of their goals and needs. And then ones that we've created, we set goals on ourselves, like this is how much more tickets we can have, more passengers or more guests, revenue increases, opening up new opportunity channels. And so we'll bring in some of that, and then show them the reason why this might be applicable to them. And then I would say for the most part, we get a high level of buy-in. And just because we can show a lot of comparables and come in and do stuff that is tracking it. And one of the things that I just kind of went over, that I'm surprised at how many folks don't watch their sales channels. So how many are you getting? How are sales online? So you have concierge sales that are coming through concierge. How about outside sales? And we one of the first things we do is we break all those sales channels out. And so they understand where their revenue, and then we try to track it as best we can. And there's a certain amount of things you can't track. And it's okay to have brand, you don't want it all in direct response. You do want some brand building, you want a good amount of brand building, but even those channels, there's reasonable ways to track them. And all of that really is a more comfortable shift when you're advising a change to anybody, because it isn't, the olden days, and I do remember the olden days, you couldn't track anything, and it was revenue that you might find out, 6 months later. And so there was a lot of this, stuff that had to go in there. That was a lot of faith, which, you have to have a little of that for sure. But no real statistics to back it up. And so when we do that, we can really move brands with their help to reach those goals. And it's a combination of us and them kind of coming up with those goals.
That's really interesting. So switching gears just a little bit here, one of the things that we wanted to jump into too is your relationship with the Prophet on CNBC and Marcus Lemonis. And I think that's just a really interesting conversation. We'd love to know how that came about and what that has been like for you working with the show.
It was a great experience. I didn't really know much about television. I definitely have a face for radio, as they say. So I didn't know what I was getting into. The producer called me. They found us through some recommendations, and the producer called me a few years ago and said, would you be interested in doing this? Turns out, I think a lot of small business people just like that show in general. So I had watched that show. It's very interesting. And would you be interested? And I said, well, okay, tell me a little bit more about it. And they said, well, we would be having you come in. There's the Housewives of Miami, one of the stars from the Housewives of Miami. We want you to help redo her brand. And I said, wait a minute, I don't want to get involved in drama television. I can just see that sort of thing happening. And they coaxed me into it, and it sounded like a pretty exciting thing. First time I met Marcus was when we started filming that first episode. And it was with Anna Kinkosis, who owns a brand called Skinny Latina. Turns out that both episodes they've filmed and right behind here, something I said made both of the people cry. So I guess it was good for television, because they like to do the big aha reveal. And so with Anna, we revealed her new branding, which she did not like at all because she was used to her others. And then which didn't air on the episode, they actually called her daughter. She called her daughter and said, "What do you think of this?" And her daughter said, "Well, Mom, it was hard for us to tell you this, but we never liked your old brand. This is gorgeous. Go." and I was sitting there like shaking and stuff. And Anna, cried when we revealed it, and it was not tears of joy. Now she's one of my good friends. She is fantastic. She's one of the hardest working people you'll ever meet. And just, it was a really great experience. And we've done subsequently with another group called the Krabby Shack up in New York. And so subsequent to that, Marcus we liked working with each other. And so we got additional Camping World, and then we redid his learning center, and his people told me, it's like drinking from a fire hose when Marcus turns his attention. He does not sleep. He's a mega genius in many ways. And so it is all on all the time. And that's why he's been so successful. I mean, it really is. He is, and it allowed us to do some pretty great things that were not necessarily in our niche, but his learning center, which we created at marcuslemonis.com, is just a free business learning center, because I don't think people have the fundamentals of business, and I want to put this out. And he spent quite a bit of money producing that. So all in all, it's been a great experience. But I don't think reality TV is for me. I don't know how much more of those things I'll do. We'll see. This is enough being here in the hotel room with Matt.
Right.
It's salacious enough for me. I don't know if I want to.
Well, if you keep making people cry, you will have a career that will last eons. I guarantee.
Yeah, I hear Jerry Springer is retiring, so maybe that's I'll take over that role.
Yeah, that's another niche you can find
That's
yourself
right.
in. I have sort of maybe an off the wall question, but it's something that fascinates me about people that are, in a specific lane like yourself in terms of advertising and marketing. How does someone in advertising advertise themselves?
Poorly. We're terrible. We are terrible at it.
Podcast appearances.
It's the shoemaker. It's the shoemaker's children. I mean, it's a pain stress point for me. Actually, it really is. Through the last couple of years, we have spent so much time triaging our clients' business. We haven't even spent a second, really, really thinking about our own marketing. And so, yes, there are ways to do that. You're supposed to have in-house teams that are dedicated to that. And it's like, I don't ever go in and say I'm great at everything. And I can tell you, we need some major improvement in that area. It is really, now, I think our website is beautiful but how we go and we outreach, that's a thing. Let's see that for the future. Let's say that for the future is going to be a big point of improvement for me.
So I have a bit of maybe it's a tactical question, maybe it's just terminology, but we've used the word marketing and we've used the word advertising a lot, kind of interchangeably. And is there a distinct difference between the two terms?
Well, to simplify it, and there you could look it up, and it can confuse you even more, by the way, when you read the definitions. But and I've actually gotten a little pushback on this. I was sitting next to a marketing professor from a college, and we were talking marketing, and we had a little bit of a disagreement on this. And my one thing is, I said, "How many years have you worked in marketing?" "Well, never." So you've just been on the theory side of it, right? And which is important. And so on the real side of it, we look at like the action of marketing really is all the planning and the strategy and the science that goes behind placing and putting the advertising out there, right? That's kind of how we look at it. So, advertising in its pure sense, is really just putting marketing materials or advertising materials out there in the world. And so that's just my simplest way. If you read the definitions, I think you might be more confused and actually be able to come away with an answer. So for the client, because we're so cute in the creative side of things, we keep changing the names of what we do. And there's a whole thing to say, take marketing and advertising even out of your title of your name. And so from a point of view of a client, right? Because they're hiring, most firms call themselves marketing and advertising. The advertising folks tend to also have the ability to be a little more full service and create some of the ads and do the production work, and which is what we do and why we kind of call ourselves an advertising agency. Would you agree with that? I want to hear your opinion. It feels very like a one-sided conversation. I want to enter. Can the back half of this, can I just interview both of you guys?
Of course.
We'd love that.
Okay, good.
Well, to answer your question, yeah, I think what made a lot of sense is saying marketing is the science of where to put your advertising. So kind of the strategy, kind of determining where the specific elements are going.
And really, when you look at the history of advertising, that's really stemmed from PR, is it was just about media placement. I mean, they didn't make any money on strategy, they didn't make any money on creative. It was just like, where can I put this advertising, right? So it was all about the advertising and not as much about the science that it is today. I mean, and I've seen that even just in the last 10 years, not to mention the last 30 some years.
So John, early on in our conversation, which seems like it was like a year ago, there's been so much great stuff we've been talking about. You mentioned failures, and then you said we don't have time to get into all of them, but I'm wondering if you can narrow it down to one favorite failure where maybe you said, oh, the light bulb moment, I've learned something from this and I'll never do that again, or just something that, we can kind of say, hey, that's a great learning point for John, and we can maybe learn something too.
I try to put those away in a place. No, I'm just kidding. There are a lot on behalf of the client, and we try to partition that off so that they're not, and I don't even know if they were called failures, because if you're doing A/B testing, one of those isn't going to work. So is that a failure, or were you just testing something? So I probably use failures as a little strongly. So every day we are learning something new, and we're saying, hey, what worked 2 years ago isn't working now. Let's shift this. And that's happened a lot across the board. I think as a business owner, my attention to, as we've rolled out departments here, we did a whole thing where we decided we wanted to be programmers on top of that, right? So we already do development and programming and simple app stuff, but like where we were doing massive, applications for big clients, and that was a division that we had. It is just not a thing that I liked in the end. It wasn't a thing that I think we particularly were the best at. And so, when you're in business, you tend to be dogged and gritty, and you want to power through stuff. But sometimes you have to say, this isn't working, it isn't for us. And so that, although it actually ended up being a successful software, was not successful for me in a business sense or in a mental sense to go down that road. So, the two parts of that, just doing it in the first place. And the second part is letting it go on longer than it should have gone on, because I don't like to quit. And so that usually you could circle a few things in that category where I'm like, let me stick with this. That could be for employees that I think I can turn around that are not necessarily fits for our agency, clients that are not fits for us in those relationships. So I think that opens up a few of those things that we'll call opportunities to change.
There you go.
And learn.
Excellent. John, this has been such a fascinating conversation. I feel like we could easily keep going for a very long time. But in the meantime, if people want to get a hold of you directly, or they want to learn more about BlackDog, where would you send them?
BlackDogAdvertising.com. And if you can't spell advertising, you could go to BlackDogAd.com. But I think they can figure out how to spell BlackDog Advertising.
And where's the name BlackDog come from? You got to tell us.
You buried the lead on that one. So in college, I had for whatever reason, got a black lab puppy. And he grew up to be about 105 pounds, and he came to class with me. He was actually, some of my professors allowed him back in the day. And there was no service dog thing back then, but they allowed me to come. And so after college, he lived 16 years. After college, everybody would ask me how he was doing. They didn't care about me. He was just like the campus dog. And so when my wife and I were thinking of a name for this organization, we decided to honor him with the name. And so that's where BlackDog came from, our black lab.
Awesome. Cool. Love dog stories. So
yes. And now by the way, we have a beagle. So go figure. We have a cinnamon and white dog adopted, and we do need to get a black dog. Everybody gives me grief about that. So
right. Well, cinnamon and white dog advertising doesn't quite roll off the tongue like BlackDog does.
I don't think so. You're right.
So, well, John, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you again for your time. We really do appreciate it. And for everybody out there who's watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros.
Thanks for listening to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Make sure to subscribe so you can tune in when new episodes release. And even better, please leave us a review on iTunes.
For more information, visit attractionpros.com.